Ladies and gentlemen, the academic procession will enter shortly. You are kindly requested to stand.
Bomma le botate, molokoloko wa diruteri o tla tsena ka nako ye kopana, le kgopelwa go ema.
Dames en here, die akademiese prosesie sal binnekort inbeweeg. U word versoek om asseblief op te staan.
By virtue of the authority entrusted to me, I constitute this assembly as a legal congregation of the University of Pretoria. During this assembly, degrees and diplomas with all the associated rights and privileges will be conferred and awarded to the candidates whose names are in the program. We have kept you standing and waiting for too long. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, including those that are walking up and down, can you join us in a silent prayer or meditation to give thanks to the achievements of our graduates today? Thank you. Let's get the formalities out of the way from my side. see we have a very huge procession today. Yeah, I think this COVID, made us miss a lot of things. I've never seen so many academics and people on the stage. But thank you very much for your time. I'm supposed to welcome you all, starting with my colleague in the executive, Professor Karolina Koronov. Welcome. And then we have the acting dean, interim dean, Professor Sandy Africa, from Humanities. Thank you very much for coming over here. And the dean of the Faculty of Theology, Professor Letsosa. Where is he? This side, that side. He's this side. There he is. Welcome, sir. And of course, Professor Innocent Pikarai, who is our Deputy Dean for Research in Humanities. Welcome, Professor. And Deputy Dean at our Gordon Institute of Business Science, Professor Whittaker. Where is she? Professor Whittaker wanted to come and join us in prayer for the business down there in Joburg. And of course, I think we can now proceed. All the chairpersons of schools, the heads of departments, directors, professors, emeriti, all the other important people, our teaching spouses and parents and everyone else, you are welcome to this great University of Pretoria. Our Student Representative Council, who is here, there he is. The SRC is also welcome to present the academic honors of our students and graduates. And of course, celebration. It's your day. It's a celebration. And I'm going to do things my way. And at this moment, ask for a huge applause to all our graduates. And of course, parents and spouses are here, but we can park you for now. We're still going to do it at the end. Thank you very much. This is graduation, ladies and gentlemen, an autumn graduation, a very special one for us, for joint faculties of Humanities and Theology and Religion. We have combined them this time, and this is one of the very big graduations. In fact, it's the biggest session of all the 28 sessions we have, with 579 candidates. 579, can you believe it? So that's... And among us, of course, we'll have an honorary doctorate. We'll get more into details about that. We also have, just under 12,000 qualifications that we are awarding in this graduation. To be exact, 11,908 for all the ceremonies. So you can just see the impact. And of course, our esteemed theologian, Isabel Apao Piri, will be awarded a very well-deserving honorary doctorate in divinity. And of course, we have postgrads, doctorates, there are so many. I don't even want to count them now, but I can tell you that this is just for a doctorate, 16% of a total number of doctorates to be conferred between now and the end of May. So this is the largest. And doctorates take a long time. That's why I don't tell you how many they are, because I know you want to leave the hall. So we just keep you here. And we start with them, That's nice. Now, this engagement, graduations for us, is an opportunity to proudly showcase our achievements of our faculties and the achievements of our students and everyone else that contributes to their education. And it's a platform that we share with you as an audience, the public, and everyone else who's watching, that we have invested so much time, so much energy, so much resources, to ensure that we reach this time. And we know that it is one of those very special celebrations. People buy new outfits, nice shoes. I always like to look at the shoes when you pass here. Very, very nice. I go like, wow. So that, it's one of the reasons why it is so special and how you take it so seriously. Unlike in other parts of the world where people don't really much care about it, but for us it's special. And thank you very much for all the hard work that you put. And we know that the value of this degree and the value that the university has put, contributes to your own personal growth and your professional development in whatever discipline that you are. So we do many things here. You are witnesses to that, just in terms of student life, other experiences, in terms of teaching and learning and research, our engagement with our communities, that's very important. We do all of that. So this value of education that I'm talking about for you as an individual, contributes to your efforts to become an entrepreneur or be employable or gainfully be employed and start making money. And if you do make some money, under the circumstances, just remember Professor Kuronov needs money from time to time, and she just blocks everything else because there's no money. So we rely on you now because we know you're going to make money. So when you just start making enough, just remember your esteemed university so that we can do the best that we can for all those that are coming after you. Now, this is a very important thing for us, teaching, learning, research, community engagement, and the bridges that we build. But looking specifically at these two faculties that we are conferring degrees and awarding diplomas this afternoon, it's a vast area of disciplines. It's many, I won't finish them, and specialties within the humanities. You're talking of, the broad social sciences, theology or religion, you're talking a lot of other things there, politics, sociology, there are many, I can't finish them. But more importantly, what we do in social sciences, is to work very hard to eradicate the social ills that we find, especially in our communities and all the existential threats that are threatening our society. Our country is having many problems, and we rely on you as social scientists to confront these problems, because if you work on those relationships and helping people, all the tools that you've learned here, we should be able to reach out to societies to start making a difference. And I know that these are different areas of focus other than the hard sciences and so forth. But the bottom line still is, it's about human behavior, it's about our relationships and attitudes and how we can form them in such a way that, we can actually reclaim our space as South Africa, because things are deteriorating really badly. So please help us, help your country, help the nation, help the continent, because your training, the scope is within our own interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research that we have been promoting over time, and all the interventions that go with it. So use the wisdom, use the skills, and everything else that we need so that we can be able to develop solutions that can actually change the world, especially the future that we are facing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very long graduation ceremony, so I'm going to curtail my remarks, but simply to congratulate you, and also our own faculties here, Humanities and Theology and Religion. We know that you've invested in people. You have tried to remove the barriers. You have done everything possible for the training of our professionals here. And we know that the challenges that we are facing, like poverty, unemployment, mental health, many others, will be confronted. And thank you very much for doing that. Now, to you, our graduate, this is a celebration. This is a day. And we know that you come from many disciplines. And we know that your experience here at this university has enriched you. And we know also that you will be able to work hard to actually sustain, not only our communities, but also your own profession and develop. And when you want to come back, those of you who are already back, come and study further, because we really need that. I was going to talk about peace and security and all of these things from the Sustainable Development Goals, but I'll skip that because I really want you to enjoy the moment and be happy with us and scream as much as you can, but to limits. Other people take it too far, so just respect the time and respect others behind you. This is not a nightclub, it's a graduation ceremony, So let's just keep that decorum of a graduation even as we enjoy ourselves. And also, please become worthy ambassadors of these universities. When you have left, you will always remain one of our important alumni, and we'll continue to be in touch with you as an alumni. Now, we give recognition here to all the people that supported you in your studies. This is the point I said I'll keep for last, and that would be, of course, our academics. It would be your parents, spouses, families, everyone else. And please join me in a round of applause for all of these people, all of them that have made you who you are today. Thank you very much. I will now request the Dean of Theology and Religion to present or introduce the candidate for the honorary degree.
Mr. Vice Principal, I have the honor to introduce to you Professor Isabel Apawo Phiri for the conferment of the degree Doctor of Divinity, honoris causa. Prof. Isabel Apawo Phiri is a former Deputy General Secretary of the World Council of Churches, responsible for public witness and diaconia from July 2012 to December 2022. During this period, she oversaw the World Council of Churches' programmatic work, ensuring the World Council of Churches has a strong and effective public voice in promoting justice and building peace through the accompaniment of member churches and ecumenical partners in advocacy for human dignity and rights. Prof. Phiri supervised professional and theologian project combating conflict and promoting international, regional, and national peace. The work also entailed promoting human dignity, rights, and justice in climate change, water, economy, ecology, food, health and healing, children, gender-related issues, and overcoming racism. She championed the World Council's Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace from 2013 to 2022. Before joining the World Council of Churches, she was a professor of African theology, dean and head of the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. An extensive list of publications shows a passion for promoting justice for people on the margins of the church and society. This passion is also reflected in the topics of many master's and PhD students she has successfully supervised over the years. Prof. Phiri's contribution as a leader and influencer is related in a service as Continental General Coordinator of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. She co-founded Circle chapters in Cape Town, Durban, and Pietermaritzburg in South Africa, and Zomba, Malawi. Prof. Phiri received a Bachelor of Education from the University of Malawi. She holds a master's degree in religious education from the University of Lancaster in England and a PhD in religious studies from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the honorary doctorate on the candidate.
I hereby confer the Doctor of Divinity with all the associated rights and privileges on Dr. Phiri now. And I have the honor to request Professor Isabella Phiri to address the Assembly.
Vice Principal, Deputy Vice Chancellors, Dean, Faculty of Theology and Religion, and all those who are in senior management and members of the Academy, and to you, graduating students, and to members of your families. I am extremely grateful to the Council of the University of Pretoria for conferring upon me the degree of Doctor of Divinity in recognition of what has been described as my significant contributions to the academia, church, and society. I thank you very much for this great honor. Receiving this honor at this stage in my life serves two purposes. First, I feel affirmed for my long passion and struggle for justice for the marginalized in the academy, church, and society. Second, it comes as an inspiration to continue inspiring others to struggle for the implementation of God's mission of justice for all God's people and creation. Affirmation. My pilgrimage in the pursuit of justice for all is linked to total embrace of the vision of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, and thereafter the Circle, which was inaugurated in Ghana in 1989 under the leadership of Mercy Amba Odioye. The Circle is a space for women from Africa who are in Africa and in the diaspora to do communal theologies by responding to the African context of multiple religions, cultures, history of colonialism, neo-colonialism, globalization, current social and economic challenges and opportunities. It is also responds to diverse experiences of structural sexism and racism in the church and in the society. The goal of these theologies is the establishment of a more just society of men and women who seek holistic well-being of the other. It is also about the production of literature on African women by the African women themselves. Armed with this vision and mission of the Circle, I have spent all my academic years establishing and strengthening chapters of the Circle in Cape Town, in Durban, in Pietermaritzburg, here in South Africa, and in Windhoek in Namibia, and Zomba in Malawi. This has led to the inclusion of African women's theologies as a field of academic study in the faculties and departments of religion and theology in the universities and theological seminaries in those places where I have worked. It also meant encouraging women and men to study gender and theology or religion using an intersectional approach. I have attracted funding research projects and numerous postgraduate students from all over the world, to study with me. One constant question I've been asked is, how do I balance being evangelical, ecumenical, and feminist in the African context? My faith commitment and academic work have been characterized by refusal to be boxed in one category or discipline. It is a spirituality of resistance that is guided by strong belief in God of justice for all. Therefore, irrespective of experiences of physical and psychological violence on myself, the academia and the church have remained my home as I champion holistic transformation of the same to embrace all of God's children as bearers of the image of God. Thus, my love for the church as an institution does not exclude it from being a site of struggle for justice for all of God's people. Now, working for the World Council of Churches, as it has been said already, has opened my eyes to appreciate the role of the church in international affairs. At the beginning, the United Nations was hesitant to work with the church because they felt the church is actually against human rights. But during the years that I have worked with the World Council of Churches, I'm glad to report that the things have changed. The United Nations wants to work with churches in the service of humanity. I will not go into detail in terms of the things I've done in the World Council of Churches, but I can only say that in my continued journey, I have recently realized, that issues of justice, it's not just about gender and racism, but we need to extend our embrace to all those people who suffer injustice. Since I retired from the World Council of Churches, I have taken the responsibility of leading a new university in Malawi. This is the University of Blantyre Synod. And my presence here, I've taken the opportunity to discuss issues of partnership in research and student examination. Now, inspiration. By receiving this award from the University of Pretoria, I join all of you who have graduated from this prestigious institution and who continue to struggle for the implementation of God's justice for all God's people and creation. Use your education to remain committed to promoting repentance that comes from the heart, mind, and your actions to become the communities that the world so urgently needs. Join the churches, people of other faiths, and people of goodwill who are mobilizing against the many pressing threats to sustainable, inclusive communities. In the absence of effective collective government action to address all the threats to life, such mobilization is a key sign of hope, and we need to promote hope in the societies. In humility, I conclude my speech by congratulating all of you who are going to be awarded degrees, diplomas today. We have taken a huge responsibility to raise high the banner of the University of Pretoria wherever we find ourselves. Special gratitude goes to the parents and the guardians and the spouses of the graduating class for the sacrifices that you have made in the process of accompanying them this far. The very final special thanks goes to the University of Pretoria administration for your role in education of this class of 2023 and for the preparations that have been made to make this day special. This is highly appreciated, and I thank you.
Just wait, Professor, just wait a little bit here. I'm not done with you. We have to thank you for the inspiration, the speech, and the contribution you made to world peace, to the souls, the well-being of people. Don't get tired. I'm told other people pray, so that they don't get tired. We wish you more and more prayers. But from the University of Pretoria, this is very special. The fellow with the picture must take a picture of you.
Thank you very much.
Taking the picture. Thank you. So let's try and move. The Dean of Humanities, I now request that you introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Principal, and good afternoon to all. Mr. Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Oluwakayode Samson Ibiayo, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Dr. Musicae with a thesis titled A Style Discussion of Jeannie Zeidel-Rudolph's Pendulum for Piano and Orchestra, and a comprehensive catalogue of her orchestral, chamber, and piano works, prepared under the supervision of Professor Alexander Johnson. In this thesis, the candidate investigated the compositional processes and stylistic characteristics of the music of South African composer Jeannie Zeidel-Rudolph. It discusses post-tonality stylistic trends in the 20th and 21st centuries. The candidate applies these stylistic characteristics to Zeidel-Rudolph's music and how they have been utilized in this composition, dealing in depth with the composer's style as can be experienced in Pendulum. The thesis includes a detailed catalogue of 3 genres of Zeidel-Rudolph's oeuvre. For each work, complete information is given as applicable. In addition, the catalogue serves as a reference point for performers, researchers, and interested individuals. Mr. Vice Principal, I request that you confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Shirley Marankikana, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Dr. Musicae with a thesis titled Exploring Early Childhood Music Experts' Practices to Guide Generalist Pre-Service Teacher Education in Southern Africa. In her thesis, the candidate explored musical and pedagogical practices as applied by expert music educators. The study findings confirmed Vygotski's social cultural learning theory as an appropriate cultural context endorsing social interaction in the music classroom. She discovered that music education in an early childhood context should offer playful pedagogies, allow social interaction and collaboration between learners, and develop musicianship to aid young children's school readiness. Moreover, her study findings revealed that pre-service teacher education programs should prioritize pedagogical content and facilitate active music making. It should offer apprenticeships in a mentored environment, and it should promote collaboration with music educators and professional music education societies. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mr. Jan Nicolateghan, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Dr. Musicae with a thesis titled Tertiary Education in Popular Music in South Africa, a Needs Assessment. In his thesis, the candidate identified relevant stakeholders who would benefit from a tertiary degree in popular music. 5 groups of research participants were involved in this mixed method study, including secondary school learners who selected music as a matric subject, students studying music at tertiary level, educators presenting music at matric level, music lecturers in popular music at tertiary institutions, and professional musicians from the music industry. Using authentic learning as theoretical framework, he discovered how learning connects theory with practice in real-life complexities. He identified that the development of such a degree may attract more students, increase the economic viability of music departments at South African universities, address issues of decolonization, and deliver employable graduates that can effectively manage a portfolio career in a diverse and ever-changing environment. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Akila Bamju, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy, Audiology, with a thesis titled Hearing Healthcare Resources and Services in South Africa, prepared under my supervision with Professor Delita Leroux as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate investigated South African perceptions of hearing healthcare resources and services, including telehealth services in the public healthcare sector. Additionally, she aimed to describe the current status of cochlear implants in South Africa. Results demonstrated that the hearing healthcare resources and services required to adequately address the burden of hearing loss are lacking. Public sector audiologists are willing to use telehealth services, but the uptake is currently low, primarily due to resource-related barriers. Results further demonstrated an increased number of cochlear implants performed countrywide over the past 30 years. Study findings provide valuable baseline data that can be used to motivate for prioritization of hearing healthcare at a national level. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mignon Boertes, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Speech-Language Pathology with a thesis titled Early Childhood Development in Low-Income Communities, Parental Perceptions and Contextual Adaptation of Screening Tools, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Dwet Swanepoel as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate culturally adapted the parents' evaluation of developmental status tools for a low-income community in South Africa. The premise of the project was the necessity of rigorous cultural adaptation for screening tools in early childhood development to ensure contextual relevance and clinical applicability. These cultural adaptations should originate from within the community. Therefore, the community perspective was used as the first step in the adaptation process. The implementation of the novel adaptation approach resulted in a culturally appropriate and clinically applicable developmental screening tool for a low-income setting in Gauteng. Based on the study findings, the candidate conceptualizes a revised framework for the cultural adaptation of screening tools. Mr. Vice Principal, I request that you confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Nigel Bradley Bogard, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Service Delivery Within the Criminal Justice System, the experiences of adult female rape survivors and service providers, prepared under the supervision of the late Professor Spies and myself as co-supervisor. In the thesis, the candidate investigated the lived experiences of adult female rape survivors and service providers regarding the quality of service rendered to these survivors in the criminal justice system. The candidate adopted the ecological systems theory as a theoretical approach during the study, further supported by other victimological theories, namely the lifestyle exposure theory, routine activities theory, and extended control balance theory. The results confirmed that although specific modes of service delivery were acceptable, the quality of service rendering to the female rape survivor must improve drastically and to such an extent that it can add value to the functioning and healing of the survivor. The candidate proposes vital components to form part of a post-rape service delivery prototype model emanating from the participants' perceived experiences, challenges, and recommendations regarding rendering post-rape service to adult female rape survivors within the criminal justice system. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Let's wait for them to finish. Good.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Davison Shawara, who has compiled with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Heritage and Museum Studies, with a thesis entitled Collections, Conservation Practices, and Possibilities of Contamination by Hazardous Pesticides, towards a non-pesticide approach of conserving organic collections at the Natural History Museum of Zimbabwe. Prepared under the supervision of Professor Sheena O'Connell and myself, Maggie Slopeser, as co-supervisor. In his thesis, the candidate investigates the contamination of organic collections from pesticide use. The study interrogates the extent to which organic collections, museum staff, researchers, and visitors to the Natural History Museum of Zimbabwe are exposed to hazardous pesticide contamination, resulting from historic conservation methods. This study was the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa, and we hope that it's going to pave the way for responsible management of collections across the entire continent. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Alta Erasmus, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Die uitdagings en behoeftes van versorgers van jongvolwassenes met traumatische breinbesering, 'n ondersteuningsprogram raamwerk, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate investigated the challenges and needs of caregivers of young adults with traumatic brain injury and developed a framework for a support program for caregivers of young adults with TBI. The study found that participants' caregiving role was associated with a range of challenges including poor physical health, lifestyle changes and challenges regarding finances, social and family life. Caregivers' voices reflected an unmet need for more support. The study contributed by developing a framework for a support program for caregivers of young adults with traumatic brain injury, focusing on providing more information about TBI, as well as the impact on young adults, their activities of daily living, as well as the psychosocial implications for the family. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice President, I introduce to you Bonita Karen Gordon, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled A Psychoeducational Program for Caregivers of People with Intellectual Disability with the Western Cape, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate critically analyzed the issues that could lead to caregivers' distress. It developed a solution in the form of psychoeducational program for caregivers. It was argued that the caregivers receive no monetary remuneration or recognition. To conceptually frame this thesis, the candidate used the biopsychosocial model from which she could understand the needs, desires, and interactions of persons with intellectual disabilities and their caregivers. The thesis shows that a targeted psychoeducational program provides education on disability, practices guidelines in problem solving, and renders opportunities for social support with others who have similar experiences, which will in turn alleviate caregiver distress. It adds new insight for health professionals to render relevant intervention programs and support. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Come closer. Congratulations. Just wait a bit. Just wait a bit. All right. Okay. It's okay.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Marinda Kotze, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis title, A Critical Examination of the Theorizing in the Study of the Behavior and Social Aspects of HIV and AIDS in South Africa, prepared under my supervision and with Prof. Marietta Visser as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate argued that when efforts are made to strengthen psychology as a scientific discipline, methodological and empirical innovations are often prioritized. At the same time, the deeper study of theorizing and meta-theoretical structures that underlie the field are neglected. Using critical realism as the study's theoretical framework, the candidate assessed the extent to which theory was visible in the peer-reviewed psychosocial literature on HIV published between 1981 and 2020, identified the specific theories used and examined the degree to which theory testing and building took place. The most prominent paradigms were analyzed with a meta-theoretical framework. The thesis successfully demonstrates how the uncritical and poor use of theory undermines the advancement of our understanding of the social and behavioral aspects of HIV. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Just wait a bit. Just wait a bit. Okay.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Arenate Kaler, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Communication Partners of Minimally Conscious Persons, Developing and Implementing a Training Program Focused on Strengthening Unaided Communication. Prepared under the supervision of Professor Juan Borman, with myself as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate employed a qualitative exploratory collective case study design with 3 sequential phases. Each phase comprised distinct steps to identify and adapt an evidence-based intervention in the form of a communication partner training program to facilitate interaction between communication partners and persons in a minimally conscious state. This study consisted of a scoping review on unaided communication, followed by synchronous online interviews to identify caregivers' communication experiences. A communication partner training program was then identified and adapted by conducting an umbrella review of the design and content of existing programs. An intervention mapping approach was applied to adjust the program to suit this unique population. The clinical utility of the newly developed Connect Plus program was determined with speech-language therapists using an online nominal group technique. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Malafani Kenneth Maine, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Towards a Decolonized Research Curriculum in Psychology, a Participatory Action Research Exploration of Students' Perspectives. Prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate critically explored the colonial foundations of psychology and how these colonial influences have contributed to rendering South African psychology irrelevant to the lived realities of most South Africans. The study also considered how this colonial history finds expression in the current psychology and research in the psychology curriculum, thus highlighting the need for decolonization. A participatory action research approach was followed to create a space for postgraduate psychology students. The students used this space to reflect on the meaning of decolonization, the colonial history of psychology, and how to decolonize psychology. The findings argue that decolonization is a means of making psychology more responsive to the context, inclusive, and more relevant. In addition, the study offers insights into the research in the psychology curriculum and how decolonization could be implemented within psychology. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Well done.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Roxanne Malan, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Speech-Language Pathology, with a thesis titled Swallowing, Feeding, Developmental Outcomes and Associated Factors of South African Infants with Hypoxic Ischemic Encephalopathy, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Kruger and Professor Kritzinger as co-supervisors. In this thesis, the candidate holistically described the complex population of South African infants with HIE regarding 3 aspects of their functioning associated biological and environmental risk factors, swallowing and feeding, and development. A deeper understanding of these infants was obtained. The importance of early speech-language therapy involvement in mitigating infant swallowing, feeding, and communication difficulties is highlighted. The candidate conceptualizes a novel framework for early intervention service delivery for affected individuals and their families from birth to school-going age. Mr. Vice Principal, I request that you confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Vuledzani Princess Ndanganeni, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Augmentative and Alternative Communication with a thesis titled Development and Evaluation of an Augmentative and Alternative Communication Training for Caregivers of Young Children in a Low-Income Rural Context of South Africa, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Juan Borman as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the candidate describes the development of a contextually and culturally appropriate training program for Vavenda caregivers of children with complex communication needs and the experimental evaluation of its effect on caregiver skills and child behaviors. Based on Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of child development, the training sought to improve the communication behaviors of the dyad by training the more knowledgeable partner in supporting augmentative and alternative means of communication. A scoping review of the literature and interviews with cultural stakeholders informed the development of the program, which was then reviewed by experts and pilot tested. Using a concurrent single-case multiple probe experimental design across 3 caregiver child dyads, the training program was evaluated and found to have medium to strong effects on improving child and caregiver communication behaviors. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Tishni Ashanu, who has complied with the requirements of the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Barriers to Treatment Among Young Adults Living with a Substance Use Disorder, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate critically evaluates barriers that impede accessing and utilizing treatment services among young adults living with a substance use disorder in Tshwane. He used the socio-ecological model and the Anderson's behavioral model to unpack the multi-level nature of treatment barriers in a mixed method study. The thesis successfully measured and ranked the relative influence of different treatment barriers, contextual barriers like community stigma, Fragmented services, lack of information about treatment, lack of resources and support, as well as cultural and religious factor, seemed more prominent than personal barriers in the South African context. The thesis highlighted different barriers for males and females. The substance use treatment gap can be reduced through multi-level stakeholder engagement to minimize stigmatizing and discrimination from community, health services, and the police services. There is a need for strategies to integrate cultural factors into treatment and to build support networks for individuals affected by substances. Advocacy for prioritization of mental health services can contribute to more and more accessible services. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you David Johannes Skuman, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Dispositional Trait, Motivation and Performance Strategies of South African National Defence Force Soldiers, Developing a Descriptive Psychological Performance Model, prepared under the supervision of Professor Nafisa Kasimji. In this thesis, the candidate critically evaluated the performance psychology characteristics of South African National Defence Force personnel. A quantitative research process involved descriptive and inferential statistical analysis and confirmatory factor analysis through structural equation modeling. The findings include comparing the performance-related psychological characteristics of the SANDF with relevant samples and comparing the performance-related psychological features between airborne and non-airborne qualified military personnel. Through applied statistical methods, 2 separate descriptive psychological models were developed. These models are inclusive of specific psychological characteristics that are characterized as potential enhancers or inhibitors of performance. The study findings highlight the practical applications of training and interventions that could potentially hold significant performance-enhancing benefits for individual and organizational functioning. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Yone Christine Skuman, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Supporting South African Foundation Phase Second Language Learners and Their Teachers, a Language Perspective, prepared under my supervision and with Professors Mia Leroux and Lydia Pottas as co-supervisors. In this thesis, the candidate investigated how speech-language therapists can appropriately support foundation phase teachers who teach second language learners alongside first language learners. She argues that the needs of teachers as well as second language learners should be determined to inform professional development for teachers. The second language learners in this study had language and auditory processing skills closer to first language norms than in previous studies. However, the teachers still experience the second language learners being on vastly different levels than the first language learners in the same classes. The effect of pedagogical translanguaging in foundation phase classrooms was investigated through design-based research. The investigation positively affected second language learners' classroom participation and confidence. The thesis highlights how speech-language therapists can collaborate with foundation phase teachers to support second language learners effectively. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Lizette Spannenberg, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Information Design with a thesis titled An Exploration of Human-Centered Design as a Means to Improve Radiology Environments in Public Hospitals, prepared under my supervision. In her thesis, the candidate critically evaluated various design processes and approaches to human-centered design to create a unique, context-sensitive, human-centered design framework. This framework was then applied to a case study conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the themes that emerged through the research, the candidate offers several constructive and holistic recommendations for improving radiology environments and provides a new way to think about how problem spaces in healthcare are evaluated. This research adds to the growing body of knowledge related to health humanities in South Africa. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Ilse Swanepoel, who has complied with requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled The Design and Evaluation of Brief Interventions for Carers of People Diagnosed with Substance Use Disorder, a Harm Reduction Perspective, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Tessa Marcus as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate undertook intervention research to develop and pilot test and intervention to enhance the coping self-efficacy of carers of persons living with a substance use disorder. The candidate conceptually framed the study by adopting both harm reduction and biopsychosocial perspectives. Through a survey to determine the harms that carers endure, the candidate was able to prioritize those harms that could be addressed through brief interventions. The results were then developed into 8 brief interventions that constituted the Care for Carers program. The key results of pre-experimental research comparing the pre- and post-exposure of carers' problem-focused coping, emotion-focused coping, and social coping found that the Care for Carers program led to a statistically significant improvement in carers' coping self-efficacy, as measured with a coping self-efficacy scale. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Marguerite van der Merwe, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Information Design, with a thesis titled Introducing Play in Design Higher Education, a South African case study, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Karen van Zyl as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate critically explored and described how the inclusion of play manifests in design higher education by influencing students' design process. The case study research is informed by a BA Information Design curricular project at the University of Pretoria. The 2019 and 2020 iterations of the project, compared by a cross-case synthesis, revealed that play affords students the opportunity to relieve stress, build momentum, learn about themselves, challenge their assumptions, enable empathy, and serves as a reminder to play. These findings underpin the argument that play is a meaningful tool for learning and which requires ontological change for a process of deep learning to occur. The candidate's resulting play-fueled pedagogy of design, which aligns with values of design for good and human-centered design, adds a new dimension to higher education in general and design education in particular. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Siko Yolokazi Siotula, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Visual Studies with a thesis titled Visualizing Southern African Later Iron Age Settlements in the Digital Age. In the thesis, the candidate studied the visualization of Southern African Later Iron Age settlements across the late 19th, 20th and early 21st centuries, as found in a survey of the cultural production, circulation, reproduction and theorization of illustrations accompanying archaeological, anthropological and historical Southern African later Iron Age settlement research. A valuable contribution of the candidate's research is its continuous demonstration of a pre-colonial hub of cosmopolitanisms on a scale never imagined in colonial histories of indigenous communities, thought of as the ultimate other of global modernity. The thesis proposes that with the authority of Eurocentric formative interpretations of later Iron Age settlement research currently under review, visualizations accompanying these settlements also need to be critically re-looked at within appropriate visual cultural methodologies informed by post-colonial and decolonial theory. The study follows a twofold methodological framework involving textual analysis and image-making processes. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts, Audiology. Belinda Dreyer with distinction. Manjulik Duplessis with distinction. Nicole Mittendorf with distinction. Michelle Skuman. Lisa van der Mescht with distinction. Augmentative and alternative communication, Azima Borat. Morwesi Mokhatusi. Sepiwe Mtonka. Batobile Ngobo. Inge Wardendau with distinction. Gonda Olafir. Clinical psychology, Keegan House with distinction. Stephen Hall. Reginald Maslachi. Liesel Naidu with distinction. Counseling psychology. Sherlinka Naidu with distinction. Sikatele Sibanda. Zara Serti. In criminology, Melissa Castlemaine with distinction. In drama and film studies, Lorica de Kock. In Fine Arts, Dylan Graham. Viola Greyling. Amy van der Berg with distinction. In information design, Weinan Kok with distinction. In psychology, Beryl Bierkes. Keenan Hernand. Zara Musa with distinction. Vicky Reinders with distinction. In research psychology, Ontatile Maboa. Michaela Muolu. In speech-language pathology, Nicola Bloy. Amy Hammond. Rui Hussein. Stembiso Ngube. Talita Nell. Jessica Palmer with distinction. Danica Shlom with distinction. Catherine van Couverden de Groot. In visual studies, Nhlosenhle Mponchane with distinction. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in History of Art, Digital Culture and Media. Marnay Swanepoel with distinction. Master of Music, Music Education. Foster Mumba. Music Technology, Tarin van der Linden. Music Therapy, Lisa Kluter. Musicology, Natasha Mertz with distinction. Performing Art, Stephanie Claire Hansen with distinction. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Social Work. Healthcare, Amonique Pretorius. Social Development and Policy, Tinyiko Gwambe with distinction. Thank you. Beauty Majuru. Mapula Maponya. Lizzie Mkawana. Ditlare Mokema. Zandile Mtsweni. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Social Work in Play Therapy, Play-Based Intervention. Rachel Johnston, with distinction. Bianca Lotheringen. Petronella Smuts. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Social Science in Heritage and Cultural Sciences, Heritage Conservation. Nancy Collette, with distinction. Johannes Elsenbroek, with distinction. Carmen Hubert, with distinction. Jabulile Mtuli. Marinda van der Nest, with distinction. L'Oreal Voss, with distinction. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Heritage and Museum Studies, Mapule Maluleke. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts Honours, Augmentative and Alternative Communication, Sipesihle Duze. Morufa Kwenane. Nomaswazi Luvuno. Kiamogetswe Makena with distinction. Zakia Manak with distinction. Sindiswa Mhlongo. Karen Mostert with distinction. Tsepo Nkwana. Diana Sali with distinction. Tikaledi Shabalala. Alanique Swart with distinction. In criminology, Yukta Bura. Chanel de Sousa. Gemma Evans. Michaela Fitzpatrick. Nosihle Gonyolo. Ilona Hager with distinction. And also, Ilona gets the trophy, the floating trophy for the best honors student in criminology. Lisa Marie Harley. Sunel Huddlestone. Callista Jacobs with distinction. Koketso Kekana. Mishe Case. Nadia Lachranji with distinction. Matsatsi Maake. Khadi Makofane. Mpo Mashilwane. Martha Mdaka. Don't forget to go to Lebohang Mlangeni. Keneilwe Mpo Mochitela. Lebone Ndlovu. Lutendo Nesindande. Amy Nyland with distinction. Yolandi Nono. Kanyisile Ntuli. Tiffany Pratt. Mariska Robertson. Celine Singh. Onsiametse Tlopane. Zoe Balloon. Drama and Film Studies, Danica Arendse. Did you come? Tiana Chiba. Bonolo Dimati. Kelsey Gibson. Corinne Human. Bongiwe Gianni. Dihan Kien with distinction. Onalerona Lefenio. Garson Ma. Simpiwe Mabaso. Ikaneng Moleko. Ayush Nana. Jonita Olafir. Nicola Prinsloo with distinction. Larika Slabert. Kule Wakaba. In visual studies, Mika Bezuidenhout with distinction. Marilee Francis Berger. Thomas Grigils. Jocelyn McNally. Xoliswa Mdingi. Nsika Yemuzi Ngampala. Ngampalala. Sorry about that. Analo Sigwabe. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Music Honours. Shante Avinand. Johannes Buertes. Inga Sigidi. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Social Science Honours, Psychology. Kyla Betzer. Yashika Bennett. Kayla Bergman Ali with distinction. Abigail Beswick with distinction. Jessica Beswick with distinction. Anzel Buerta with distinction. Tristan Kane with distinction. Chetana Chattergun with distinction. Catherine Davies with distinction. Holly Davis with distinction. Marno Douge. Hannah Dufus with distinction. Rianka Fouché with distinction. Heike Hartzenberg with distinction. Shannon Hassan. Tebogo Kalane. Alicia Kirsten. Stefan Kleinhans with distinction. Thank you. Leila. Just wait for him. Kayla LaRue with distinction. Nosipo Mashaba with distinction. Tejofatso Masiane with distinction. Caitlin Matthew with distinction. Chaboipewe Matibe with distinction. Reese McLucky. Kelly Moore with distinction. Mulalo Netswera. Matapelo Ngwase. Nadine Norke with distinction. Mason Park. Chandni Reddy. Jody Rogers. Marie Rue with distinction. Rafense Seslako with distinction. Lerato Celebi with distinction. Solohelo Setlaba with distinction. Nicole Siebert with distinction. Tyler Smith. Rushan Stellenberg with distinction. Tabsile Chabalala with distinction. Justin Ace with distinction. Abdurrahman Vayed with distinction. Cornelius van Niekerk with distinction. Jamie Lee Williams with distinction. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Social Science Honours in Heritage and Cultural Sciences, Heritage, Museum and Preservation Studies, Nicola Daniels with distinction. Adrian Diamond with distinction. Belina Motswakumo. Okay. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts. Audiology, Caitlin Beer, with distinction. Grace da Asensio. Eloise Delport. Shanae Furi. Larissa Giesen. Savannah Hatting. Andrea Heffer. Spiwosami Tlatwayo, who also receives the A.B. Clemens Prize given to the B.A. Speech Language Pathology or B.A. Audiology student in the final year who obtains the highest mark for a research project. Kyla Knutzer. Audrey LaRue. Selo Mangyane, who also receives the A.B. Clemens Prize to the B.A. Speech Language Pathology or B.A. Audiology student in the final year who obtained the highest mark for a research project. Sanele Massina. Lisa Marie Michal. Rafilwe Mochao, who received also the A.B. Clemens Prize to the B.A. Speech Language Pathology or B.A. Audiology student in the final year who obtained the highest marks for a research project. Ipeleng Moeng, who also received the A.B. Clemens Prize to the B.A. Speech Language Pathology or B.A. Audiology student in the final year who obtained the highest marks for a research project. Yoene Mouton. Zanri Otto. Cecile Rieders with distinction, and she receives the Susan Swart Prize to the Best Audiology Student Academic. Mosima Sekhala. Amara Sheikh Ahmed. Monique Smith. So, Nicolene Vogel, with distinction, who also receives the Salsha Prize to the Best Audiology Student, Clinical, and also the South African Association of Audiologists Prize to the Best Final Year Student in Practical Audiology. Clarissa Wenzel. Fine Arts, Audrey Buerta. Mia de Wet. Monica Klopper. Caitlin LaRue with distinction. Yannick Murray. Shannon Mitchley. Patricia Moache. Amanda Rieders. Tristan Rowland. Caitlin Sauls. Susan Schroeder. Jenna Sneyman. Margot van Rensburg with distinction. Annika van Zyl. Clara van Wille. And in information design, Venus Bebenzi. Dylan Buerta. You'll have to wait, he forgot. Prof is hidden. Okay. Ethan Cowie. Elizabeth Dempers. Jana Ferreira. Morgan Ferreira. Amore Furi. Zaibun Ghani. Alika Geldenes with distinction. Minka Human. Emma Gerard. Renee Kukumur with distinction. Lamé Labuskachny. Sabrina Longo. Emily Lorenzo. Ruan Michal. Temba Numzana. Nokubonga Ndlovu. Robin Nell. Please hold on just a minute.
Can you get the mic on, please? Good afternoon. I know it is a very difficult time. It's a difficult celebration. I see our graduates are disappearing from the hall. The ceremony is not finished. It only gets formally dissolved. So I understand when you have to go in and out to the washroom, because it's been a long time. But I want to appeal to you to respect this ceremony. It is something very serious, but also very legal. Thank you.
We continue. Mandisa Nkumanda. Marissa Oerlemans with distinction. Mariam Omar. Taylor Partington. Kaylee Peterson. Emma Pringle. Alexandra Rashanidis. Sydney Rieder. Michelle Skitzer. Trent Shippey with distinction. Uyanda Sibia. Yantik Tam. Robin Thompson. Chantal van der Merwe. Kirsten van der Merwe. Danielle van der Venter with distinction. Elsie van Jaarsveld. Zoe van Sittert. Sorry about that, Jolisa. Jolise van Tonder. Zuin van Wyk with distinction. Tyler Jade Vermaak with distinction. Luke Williams. Zeline Zwiers. In speech-language pathology, Naira Abu, who also receives the Pierre Pinard Prize to the best final year speech-language pathology student with the highest overall average and who obtained at least 70% across the 4 years. Jessica X. Leah Boyson. Kuray Buata. Tanya Erasmus. Benita Jordan. Ntombi Zagiti Kumalo. Tanzile Makobe. Cabo Matela. Olerato Moncho. Lisa Opperman. Marianne Pullman. Abigail Rieder. Jessie Sharper. Isabel Siaki, who also receives the Sashler Prize to the Best Speech Language Pathology Student, Clinical. Megan van Rensburg. Amber van Wyk. Johanne Vermaak. Michaela Viljoen. Yasira Wajar. Corinne Wildenboer. Visual Studies, Alexander Conradi with distinction. Sarah Davies with distinction. Jordan Denton with distinction. Anelisiwe Dinizulu. Jordan Eckstein. Valentina Guerra with distinction. Duduetsang Mokobane. Ompile Mosehla. Kwitsione Mzimba. Senelisiwe Ngubeni. Katleho Nkambule. Louise Parsons. Tulufelo Rakhalani. Cassandra Retzlaff. Dominic Stein. Philyun Swanepoel. Sabrina Tavares. Takani Chiva. Laura van der Westhuizen. Vuyo Kaba. Bachelor of Drama. Zian Imran Abdul Sattar. Caitlin Aries. Okay. Priyanka Bandhu with distinction. Tahira Davids. Kirsten Dickinson with distinction. Tegan Forbes. Mahlape Maketa. Ntabiseng Masetla. Kopano Masibi. Kagiso Masinda. Pearl Mbane. Tiamo Mokwana. Luyanda Ngwenya. Anke Odendaal. Caitlin Peak. Samkelo Khadebe. Cynthia Ramatlape. Talia Sarup. Nonkululeko Shabalala. Busle Sibagnoni. Elrica Smith with distinction. Human van der Merwe with distinction. Marizel van Niekerk. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Music. Grace Allen. Ashley Buerta with distinction. Walter Chuene. Colette Dutoy with distinction. Brett Hannay with distinction. Kayla Jardim. Minay de Villiers with distinction. Takudzwa Mutasa with distinction. Natasha Nepkin. Siobhan Plykes. Danielle Ross. Alistair Scobby with distinction. Christel van der Merwe. Shanae Verster. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Social Work. Patrick Beloy. Nikita Palako. Danielle De Bruin. Stephanie Dutoy. Tanya Gounden. Sherazan Hartza with distinction. Katlejo Kadi. Sharon Kumalo. Karabo College. Renee Kroch with distinction. Blessing Macheke. Katlejo Maslangu. Precious Malemacha. Tumelo Mampone. Tisecho Matoto. Karabo Matlakala. Elizabeth Matlala. Emmanuel Molepo. Beverly Mumbayararja. Matlochonolo Motlabi. Charmaine Moyo. Michelle Mukome. Tafadzwa Musungo. Alicia Ndlazulwana. Zandile Ndlela, with distinction, and also she's awarded the Susan van Niekerk Award of Pretoria Child and Family Care Society for the best student in social work. Johannes Ngobeni. Perseverance Nkuna. Tinyiko Nkuna. Wendy Nkuna. DeAndre Oberholzer. Karika Rousseau. Elisma Skieperts. Idene Skumbi. Tebogo Sebesho. Karabo Sidhu. Anzel Smith. Oh gosh, I just so. Thank you. Okay. Journey Stander with distinction. Matsikane Tau. Dineo Tladi. Sibahle Balashia. and Alicia Vermaas with distinction. Okay, so it's now the theology candidates, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you get this mic working? I see the mic controller is also falling asleep. We are now proceeding to the Faculty of Theology and Religion. I would like to request you once more just to keep the decorum of this graduation ceremony. We can hear that there are more chit-chats than there are cheering of candidates. Could we maintain the dignity and respect of the ceremony and until we end? So I want to request now the Dean of Theology and Religion to introduce to me candidates present here whose names appear in the program.
Mr. Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Ernest Ajimang, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Ghana Prayer Camp Liturgies for Spiritual Support Regarding Mental Suffering, a Practical Theological Approach, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the candidate investigates the liturgies at prayer camps in Ghana that aim to provide spiritual healing for persons with mental health challenges. A multidisciplinary method, participation, action, research at 3 prayer camps and interviews were utilized for gathering data. The study's primary outcome is that liturgies for spiritual healing and support for people with mental health issues and their families in an African context make a positive contribution to people's lives, especially where medical facilities are not accessible to most of the population. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree to the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Frederik Rudolf Ludovicus Coetzee, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Evangelisasie en die Evangelie van die Koninkryk binne 'n missionale paradigma, prepared under my supervision with Professor Johannes J. Knutse as co-supervisor. In his thesis, the candidate explored evangelism, which is again back on the agenda of the Church and theology. As a result of negative experiences and practices of evangelism in the past, it has become necessary to rediscover evangelism in a post-Christendom context to enable theological recovery of evangelism. This new understanding of evangelism can restore authentic practices for churches in spreading the good news. Evangelism must be understood as essential to participate in the mission of God to achieve this restoration. Furthermore, evangelism needed to be rediscovered as an invitation to missional discipleship in the coming of the kingdom of God. In this thesis, evangelism was rediscovered in terms of the good news of the reign of God. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Tabani Mkhize, who complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Mission as Being With in the Context of the COVID-19 Lockdown in South Africa, prepared under the supervision of Professor Hannes Knutse. In this thesis, the candidate investigated the Church's presence using a qualitative interview method to discover the meaning of being with in the context of the COVID-19 lockdown. The study provides the Church with the opportunity to shift from inward-looking to a Church that is community-focused, that prepares, trains, and equips people for the work of ministry in their communities with or without gatherings. Based on the 6 attributes of a missional church, the research recommends a 7-step process to prepare the Church for possible future pandemics and major disasters. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Motsepi Lawrence Mokwani, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Pentecostal Preaching and Christology, an Empirical Study, prepared under my supervision with Professor Yolanda Dreyer as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate explored Pentecostal preaching and its related Christological aspects in some churches of the Assemblies of God. This exploration was done through sermon analysis and semi-structured interviews. The key concepts in this thesis are Pentecostalism, Pentecostal preaching, and Christology. The rationale behind this study was to explore factors affecting Pentecostal preaching with the hope of contributing to improvements in the practice of preaching. It was found that while the interviewees had a fair understanding of Pentecostalism and Pentecostal preaching and Christology, there is still much improvement needed in preaching. It was also found that Christology was not sufficiently expressed in the preaching and that there is an urgent need for pre-ministerial theological training for pastors. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Sylvia Musasiwa, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled The Role of Women in the Death Rites of Passage Within the Zezuru Culture of Zimbabwe, a Pastoral Approach, prepared under my supervision. In the thesis, the candidate explores the role of women in these death rites of passage. The question is how the Christian Church can contextualize and utilize those rites of passage to provide adequate pastoral care to widows going through the grief process. The study found that in many respects, widows are subjected to cultural marginalization and oppression. Christian functional substitutes for some of the cultural practices were explored, the Church can implement these substitutes as part of its pastoral care. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Michael Padicombe, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with his thesis entitled Missional Readiness, a post-foundational practical theological analysis of the role of mission in leadership training within the Salvation Army in Canada, prepared under the supervision of Professor Johan Mailan. In his thesis, the candidate analyzes the curriculum for training for future officers in the Canada and Bermuda territory of the Salvation Army, with a focus on its missional content. By qualitative and quantitative methods, the curriculum was evaluated, and recently commissioned officers were interviewed on the quality of the mission theology they had been taught. The history of theological education and the ethos of the Salvation Army were scrutinized, and the study found that insufficient training adversely affects future ministers' leadership of local churches. The study developed a training model of missional hermeneutics to enhance Salvation Army officers' engagement in contextual mission. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Nadine Swanepoel, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Mapping the Contribution of Feminist Spiritualities to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal of Gender Equality, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate suggested that feminist spirituality as a counter-movement and a historical method for women to authorize themselves to speak in a patriarchal world can contribute to the realization of the goal of gender equality as set by the United Nations Sustainable Development Programme. The candidate positioned this in the broader framework of the increasing dialogue between religion and sustainable development, focusing on how religious communities can act as agents of change. This spirituality is related to a turn to religion that has been taking place in different contexts. The candidate mapped the spirituality and contribution of 4 feminist theologians spanning different contexts, using the characteristics of feminist spirituality identified by Nicholas Slee. In this regard, the candidate made a novel and interdisciplinary contribution, the type that Prof. Piri referred to earlier. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Kimyon Tangwari, who has complied with the requirements of the degree Doctor of Philosophy with the title of The Identity of the Church, A Quest for Her Economic Sustainability, a case study of the Assemblies of God Back to God Church in Zimbabwe. In this thesis, the candidate conducted a qualitative study of the identity and economics of classical Pentecostal church through a case study with the Assemblies of God Back to God denomination in Zimbabwe. His study observed that the prevailing economic crisis and COVID-19 unsettled Zimbabwe ecclesiology. The church, especially the poor, got incapacitated, failed to afford the integral pastoral mission, and lost its identity, while humanity needed the wholesome church that attended to all areas of life. His study employed theonomic reciprocatory theory, which integrates human submission and collaboration with God for economic sustainability. It proposes that the church adopt contextual viable strategies to sustain an inclusive mission and regain its identity in Zimbabwe. Mr. Vice Principal, I request to you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Andrew Lamont Turner, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Pastoral Care Training of Educators for Improved Learning and Teaching in South African Schools, prepared under my supervision. In the thesis, the candidate explored the role of teachers in the provision of pastoral care to learners in South Africa as mandated by the government. According to the data gathered, student teachers find this a challenging role to fulfill given their limited life experience and training in providing care. Practicing teachers also find that a lack of specific training and a heavy workload impede the effective provision of care. The study concluded that adequate training for both student teachers and practicing teachers could enable them to move beyond only teaching the curriculum to include facilitating the development of identity and relationship skills in learners. These facets of human experience fall within the purview of the pastoral component in education. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Godibert Kelly Garbine, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled The Concept of Community in the Johannine Gospel, prepared under the supervision of Professor Ernest van Eck. In this thesis, the candidate explored an intercultural reading of the Johannine and Akan community ideations, employing Osombatsa's communicative approach as theoretical framework. Applying this three-step frame of interpretation, the first part, which included the exegesis of the text, examine the community theme through a narrative analysis of 3 narratives, and trace the narrative development of the theme in John. Further, Archon maximes formed the substratum of the analysis of the Archon community concept. After analyzing both community concepts, the study engaged them in an intercultural reading. The research concludes that the remedy for sociocultural maladies is a believing community that fulfills its mission of replicating the community of God by demonstrating attributes like unity, reciprocal love, care, service, and communalism. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Divinity. And we have Stephanie Chambers with distinction.
No pictures. Let's wait.
Alida Duplessis. Vainant Yelov with distinction. Anna McClintock. Stefan Roos with distinction. Joanna Swanepoel with distinction. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Theology. Vincent Mandla with distinction. Kgetho Mongwe. Gavin Michael with distinction. Jacobina Kekana. Tato Matsipe. Luisa Makura. Anna Niemann. Patricia Nyandoro with distinction. Lebohang Muntuedi. Tembani Dinwa. Morgan Mambwe with distinction. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts, Honours in Theology. Elna Esterhazen. Edward Mostert. Karabo Lehodi. Palisa Mademane with distinction. Agrinef Maju. Prudence Fasahi. Misumzi Zala. Johannes Enslan. Danford Makwet. Sibusiso Mamba. Tato Molepo. Joshua Oluwatui with distinction. Luvo Poso. Divine Seretse. Felicity Mtetwa. Jade Nell. Fanele Sibongo Mbuli. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts in Theology. Jean Pere Basson, with distinction. Kefinse Khatle. Warabile Kuno. Minenhle Kumalo. Zachary Labuskachna, with distinction. Innocentia Letswalo. Senazo Lutwitsa. Naledi Maboki. Mthokozisi Masangu. Joanna Matabate. Thando Lwethu Mbebe. Esethu Mbulawa. Sibonile Mkonza. Kamogelo Mohanedi. Makoso Mokhohlwa. Nthabiseng Moloi. Lerato Motshekgwa. Sinothile Mpanza. Nonkululeko Ntetwa. Ayanda Mchale. Mokethwa Mulaudzi. Anelisa Nakani. Oagile Nkadimeng. Thabiso Nchangase. Lerato Phahlamohlaka. Rithabile Radijeje. Nombulelo Saul. Kreflo Shai. Katlego Shai. Nongceba Siyonywana. Desri Tobejani. Hofaona Tlotleng. Melaine Williams with distinction. Tinuate Williams with distinction. Siyabonga Zungu. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the Diploma in Theology. Andre Borain. Tato Chauke. Ntabiseng Khal. Thabang Kotsedi. Lethaba Mabotja. Or with distinction. Lerato Makaringe. Olanda Manghed. Kongi Masia. Gaugelo Matsepane. Solomon Mbokani. Wendy Mguni. Angela Mutabatsindi. Makhale Rashilo. Lerato Sibudi. Pumolo Sefoka. Kanyisa Skei. And our last candidate, Boitumelo Tsile.
Let's give our graduates again a round of applause. Let's also applaud family, friends, sponsors, everyone else that has made it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the proceedings. And before we close, I know you're hungry. We have some refreshments. I hope they didn't get hungry and left as well in a marquee outside. Or those that left here early, they probably finished whatever was there. Now, we are requested to rise and remain standing for the singing of the national anthem. Thank you. And thank you for your perseverance. By virtue of the authority entrusted to me, I now dissolve this Assembly of the University of Pretoria.
So